In a world overwhelmed by constant chatter and clashing opinions, silence can feel like a forgotten sanctuary. Life often confronts us with moments of discord, emotional storms, and challenges that leave us feeling unsteady. Yet, I've come to understand that in these very moments, silence becomes a source of strength and clarity. Through my journey, I've discovered that silence isn't about avoiding life's difficulties. It's about meeting them with presence and awareness. Inspired by the teachings of Buddhism, I've learned to see silence not as emptiness, but as a space where wisdom grows. In this space, I've found the answers to navigate life's trials with compassion and understanding. Today, I invite you to explore this profound art of silence with me. Together, we'll uncover lessons that go beyond the noise of the world, bringing peace to our minds and strength to our spirits. If you're searching for a way to transform conflict into clarity and challenges into growth, stay with me as we delve into the transformative power of silence. 1. How to control anger. I've learned that anger is like a fire. It can start small, but if left unchecked, it consumes everything in its path. In Buddhism, anger is understood as one of the three poisons, along with greed and ignorance, that cloud the mind and keep us trapped in suffering. Recognizing anger for what it is, a temporary emotion rather than a permanent reality, was the first step for me in transforming it into a source of insight and growth. When I feel anger arise, I remind myself of the Buddha's teachings on mindfulness. Instead of reacting, I pause and observe the feeling without judgment. I ask myself, what is the root of this anger? Is it unmet expectations, a perceived insult, or frustration over things I cannot control? This process of self-inquiry often reveals that my anger stems from attachment to how I think the world should be, rather than accepting it as it is. In these moments, I turn to my breath. Deep, mindful breathing acts as a bridge between my emotions and my awareness. With each inhale, I focus on the present moment. With each exhale, I let go of the tension in my body. It's not about suppressing anger, but transforming it into something constructive. This practice has taught me that anger is energy, and I have the power to redirect that energy toward understanding and compassion. For example, when someone says something hurtful, my initial reaction might be to lash out, but I've come to realize that the other person's words are a reflection of their own pain or confusion. Instead of responding in kind, I choose to see their suffering. By extending compassion, I diffuse the situation and find peace within myself. Another tool I've found helpful is metta meditation, or loving-kindness meditation. By silently repeating phrases like, "May I be happy, may I be peaceful, may I be free from suffering," I soften the edges of my anger. When I extend these wishes to the person who has triggered my anger, the barriers between us dissolve. This doesn't mean I condone harmful behavior, but I refuse to let anger poison my mind or actions. Through Buddhist practice, I've learned that anger is not my enemy, but my teacher. Each time it arises, it presents an opportunity to practice patience, mindfulness, and compassion. Slowly but surely, I've found that my relationship with anger has shifted. What once felt like an uncontrollable force now feels like a wave I can ride with balance and clarity. This, to me, is liberation. 2. Against injustice. Facing injustice is one of the most difficult challenges I've encountered. When something feels deeply unfair, it's natural to want to fight back or shout my truth to the world. But Buddhism has taught me that the way I respond to injustice determines whether I create more suffering or plant the seeds of peace. When I encounter injustice, my first instinct is to pause and reflect. The Buddha's teachings remind me that my anger or outrage, while valid, is not the solution. Instead, I ground myself in the practice of mindfulness. I acknowledge the injustice, but I don't let it overwhelm me. This pause creates space for clarity, allowing me to respond skillfully rather than react impulsively. The principle of upaya, or skillful means, has been a guiding light for me. It encourages me to ask, what response will truly alleviate suffering in this situation? Sometimes that means speaking up with courage and compassion, and other times it means choosing silence and letting my actions speak louder than words. Both approaches are rooted in the understanding that my goal is not to punish or harm, but to restore balance and harmony. In the face of injustice, I also turn to the teachings of interdependence. Recognizing that all beings are interconnected, I remind myself that even those who perpetuate injustice are not separate from me. This doesn't mean I condone their actions, but it helps me approach the situation with compassion rather than hatred. By seeing the humanity in the other person, I open the door to dialogue and understanding. There was a time when I felt wronged at work. A colleague took credit for my efforts, and my first reaction was anger and resentment. But instead of acting on those feelings, I reflected on the Buddha's teaching of right speech. When I finally addressed the issue, I spoke calmly and with respect, focusing on the facts rather than accusations. This approach not only resolved the conflict, but also strengthened our professional relationship. Lastly, I've found solace in the Buddhist concept of karma. While I may not see justice immediately, I trust that every action carries consequences. My role is to act with integrity and leave the rest to the unfolding of natural law. This trust in the universe's balance allows me to release the burden of trying to control outcomes. Injustice is an inevitable part of life, but it doesn't have to rob me of my peace. By responding with mindfulness, compassion, and wisdom, I've learned to navigate these situations with grace. Each act of kindness, even in the face of wrongdoing, contributes to a world where justice and compassion can flourish. 3. The storm of insults. Insults can feel like an unexpected storm, arriving without warning and shaking the foundations of our emotional balance. There was a time when an insult would pierce me deeply, leaving me defensive, angry, or doubting my worth. But through the teachings of Buddhism, I've come to see insults for what they truly are: mere words, fleeting and powerless unless I give them weight. When someone insults me, my first response is to pause and breathe. The Buddha often taught that our reactions, not the external event, are what cause suffering. This wisdom reminds me that I have the power to choose my response. Instead of letting the insult ignite a fire within me, I see it as an opportunity to practice emotional control. I acknowledge the sting, but refuse to let it take root in my heart. In these moments, I remind myself of the concept of anatta, or non-self. The insult is not a reflection of who I am, but rather the product of the other person's perceptions, biases, or struggles. By detaching my sense of self-worth from their words, I free myself from their judgment. The insult then becomes like a wave crashing against a rock. It cannot erode the steady ground of my inner peace. Patience is another invaluable tool. The Buddha taught that patience is the highest virtue, and I found this to be especially true when faced with insults. Instead of reacting in anger, I let the words pass through me, like wind through an open window. This doesn't mean I suppress my feelings. It means I choose to respond with clarity and compassion rather than impulsivity. There was a time when someone criticized me harshly in front of others. My ego screamed for me to defend myself, to argue and prove them wrong. But I chose to remain silent and reflect. Later, I calmly spoke to the person in private, seeking to understand their perspective rather than attack them in return. To my surprise, they admitted their words were spoken in frustration, not truth. That experience taught me the strength of composure and the value of addressing conflict with wisdom. Insults are often more about the insulter than the insulted. By recognizing this, I can respond not with resentment, but with empathy. I've learned to see insults as opportunities to practice equanimity, to strengthen my emotional resilience and remain anchored in my own sense of worth. 4. Facing gossip. Gossip can feel like a shadow cast over your character, distorting the truth and leaving you exposed to judgment. I've faced gossip many times, and it used to leave me feeling powerless, desperate to set the record straight. But Buddhism has taught me that how I respond to gossip is far more important than the gossip itself. When I hear gossip about myself, my first reaction is to observe my emotions without judgment. I notice the sting of betrayal or the frustration of being misunderstood, but I don't let those feelings dictate my actions. The Buddha's teaching of mindfulness helps me create a space between the gossip and my response, allowing me to act with dignity and clarity. There are times when silence is the most powerful response. I've learned that not every rumor needs to be addressed. Gossip often thrives on attention, and by refusing to engage, I deprive it of the fuel it needs to grow. This doesn't mean I ignore situations that require action, but I choose my battles carefully, guided by the principle of right effort. I focus my energy on what truly matters, rather than being consumed by the noise of false words. In situations where gossip causes harm or misunderstanding, I choose direct but calm confrontation. I approach the person spreading the rumors, not with anger, but with the intention of understanding and resolving the issue. I've found that many times gossip stems from insecurity or misunderstanding. By addressing it with compassion and clarity, I've been able to transform conflict into connection. One of the most profound lessons I've learned is that gossip, like all things, is impermanent. What seems overwhelming today will fade with time. Instead of obsessing over others' opinions, I focus on living with integrity. When my actions align with my values, the truth eventually shines through, no matter what rumors are spoken. Through the lens of Buddhism, I see gossip as a mirror. It reflects not only the person spreading it, but also my own capacity for patience and self-control. Each instance of gossip is an opportunity to practice compassion, to rise above pettiness, and to remain true to myself. And in doing so, I've found a quiet strength that no rumor can shake. 5. When criticized unjustly. Unjust criticism can feel like a heavy blow, shaking your sense of self and tempting you to react defensively. I've experienced the sting of being misunderstood, judged, or unfairly blamed, and I know how quickly anger and frustration can rise. But through Buddhist teachings, I've learned to face such moments with grace, allowing them to strengthen rather than unsettle me. When someone criticizes me unjustly, my first instinct is no longer to argue or defend myself. Instead, I pause and take a deep breath, grounding myself in the present moment. The Buddha taught that suffering arises not from external events, but from our attachments and reactions. This simple truth reminds me that I hold the power to determine how much weight I give to criticism. By pausing, I choose not to let the words take control of my emotions. Silence becomes my ally in these situations. It's not a sign of weakness or agreement, but a moment of mindfulness. Rather than rushing to respond, I use this silence to observe my thoughts and feelings. I ask myself, why does this criticism hurt? Is it because of my ego? Does it touch upon a deeper insecurity? This self-awareness transforms the criticism from an attack into an opportunity for growth. In Buddhist practice, I've also embraced the concept of right speech. Before responding to criticism, I consider whether my words will bring clarity or escalate conflict. If my response is driven by anger or the need to prove myself, I hold back. Instead, I aim to speak only when I can do so with compassion and purpose. This approach has allowed me to resolve misunderstandings without creating further discord. One powerful lesson I've learned is that unjust criticism often says more about the critic than the criticized. The Buddha taught that we each carry our own suffering, and many times those who lash out are projecting their struggles onto others. By seeing the critic with compassion rather than hostility, I free myself from the cycle of resentment. Their words lose their sting, and I find peace in knowing my worth is not defined by their opinion. Unjust criticism has become a mirror for me, reflecting both my vulnerabilities and my strength. Through mindfulness, silence, and self-awareness, I've learned to face such moments with composure, remaining true to my values while refusing to let negativity disturb my inner calm. 6. How to face loss. Loss is one of life's great inevitabilities. Whether it's the death of a loved one, the end of a relationship, or the loss of something we hold dear, it leaves us feeling empty and vulnerable. I've walked through the shadow of loss, and while the pain was profound, the teachings of Buddhism have helped me embrace it as a part of the human experience. When loss occurs, my first step is to allow myself to feel. The Buddha taught that suffering is a natural part of life, and denying our emotions only deepens our pain. I let the tears come, acknowledging the grief, anger, or sadness without judgment. These emotions are not weaknesses. They are the heart's way of processing change. By sitting with them mindfully, I allow them to flow through me rather than becoming trapped within. Acceptance is the cornerstone of facing loss. I remind myself of anicca, the Buddhist concept of impermanence. Everything in life is transient, every joy, every sorrow, every connection. This truth doesn't diminish the importance of what I've lost. Instead, it helps me cherish the beauty of the moments we shared. Recognizing impermanence allows me to release the grip of longing and find peace in the present. Mindfulness has been my anchor in the storm of loss. I practice being fully present, whether through meditation, deep breathing, or simply observing the world around me. This presence reminds me that while the pain of loss is real, it doesn't define my entire existence. There is still beauty, still light, still life to be lived. In times of loss, I also turn to gratitude. I reflect on what the person or thing I've lost brought into my life, the lessons, the joy, the growth. Gratitude doesn't erase the pain, but it shifts my focus from what I no longer have to the gifts I've received. It helps me honor their memory or significance in a way that uplifts rather than burdens me. Resilience grows in the soil of loss. Each time I've faced it, I've emerged stronger, more compassionate, and more connected to life's truths. The Buddha taught that suffering can lead to awakening, and I've found this to be true. Loss strips away illusions of permanence and control, leaving behind a deeper understanding of myself and the world. Facing loss is never easy, But by embracing it with mindfulness, acceptance, and gratitude, I've found a path through the pain. Loss no longer feels like an end, but a transformation, a reminder of life's precious, fleeting beauty. 7. When people boast. When I encounter people who boast or seek to elevate themselves through prideful words, I'm reminded of the Buddha's teachings on humility and the nature of the ego. Boasting often arises from a place of insecurity, a need to validate oneself in the eyes of others. Instead of reacting with irritation or judgment, I choose to respond with silence, patience, and understanding. Silence is not an act of submission, but a mindful practice of self-restraint. When I remain silent in the face of boasting, I avoid becoming entangled in the same web of ego-driven behavior. Boasting often invites comparison or competition, but silence allows me to sidestep that trap. In that moment, I focus inward, grounding myself in my own sense of worth rather than seeking external validation. Humility becomes my guiding principle. The Buddha taught that the ego, with its endless desires and attachments, is the root of suffering. When someone boasts, I see it as a manifestation of their own struggle with ego, not as a reflection of their true self. By viewing them with compassion rather than annoyance, I free myself from the negative emotions that boasting can provoke. I've also learned to use these moments as opportunities for reflection. When I feel unsettled by someone's boasting, I ask myself why. Is it because their words challenge my own sense of self-worth? Does it touch upon an insecurity I need to address? By turning inward, I gain insight into my own mind and continue my journey toward greater self-awareness. Boasting can also teach us the power of right speech. In Buddhist practice, we are encouraged to speak only when our words are truthful, beneficial, and kind. When I encounter someone who boasts, I am reminded to evaluate my own communication. Am I speaking to uplift others or to uplift myself? This reflection helps me cultivate more meaningful and mindful interactions. In the face of boasting, I also remember the value of equanimity. Just as the Buddha advised us to remain unmoved by praise or blame, I strive to stay centered regardless of others' displays of pride. Their words do not define me or my worth, nor do they diminish the inner peace I work to maintain. Ultimately, when people boast, I choose to respond with humility, silence, and compassion. In doing so, I not only protect my peace, but also embody the qualities of patience and understanding that the Buddha encouraged us to cultivate. 8. Navigating the seas of ignorance. Life often feels like a vast, unpredictable ocean, filled with waves of uncertainty and challenges that test our patience and resolve. In these moments of ignorance, when answers elude us or clarity seems impossible, I find solace in the Buddha's teachings on mindfulness, acceptance, and resilience. The first step in navigating ignorance is to embrace it. The Buddha taught that not knowing is a natural part of existence. Instead of resisting or fearing uncertainty, I accept it as an opportunity for growth. Ignorance is not a weakness but a starting point, a chance to learn and evolve. By acknowledging the limits of my knowledge, I open myself to new perspectives and insights. Patience becomes my compass as I traverse the unknown. When I face uncertainty, I resist the urge to rush toward conclusions or act out of frustration. Instead, I breathe deeply, grounding myself in the present moment. The Buddha often emphasized the importance of sati, mindfulness. By staying present, I can observe my thoughts and emotions without being overwhelmed by them. Resilience is another essential quality in the face of ignorance. The Buddha likened resilience to the roots of a tree, which hold firm even in the strongest winds. When I encounter uncertainty, I remind myself that I have faced challenges before and emerged stronger. Each wave of ignorance is an opportunity to cultivate inner strength and adapt to the changing tides of life. In moments of doubt, I also practice right effort. This means channeling my energy toward constructive actions rather than being consumed by worry or fear. When I feel lost, I focus on what I can do in the present moment, whether it's seeking knowledge, helping others, or simply sitting in meditation. These small, mindful actions guide me through the fog of uncertainty. The Buddha's teaching on anicca, or impermanence, offers another guiding light. I remind myself that ignorance, like all things, is temporary. Clarity will come with time and effort, just as the sun eventually rises after the darkest night. This understanding helps me remain calm and hopeful, even when answers seem distant. Lastly, I cultivate an open mind. Ignorance is an invitation to learn, not a barrier to progress. By remaining curious and willing to explore new ideas, I transform uncertainty into a journey of discovery. Every question becomes a doorway, leading me closer to wisdom and understanding. Navigating the seas of ignorance is not about conquering the unknown, but about embracing it with patience, resilience, and mindfulness. With these tools, I can remain steady amidst life's uncertainties, finding peace and strength even in the face of the unknown. 9. The art of silence amid false rumors. When faced with false rumors about me, my first instinct might be to defend myself, to set the record straight. But through Buddhist practice, I've learned that silence often carries more power than words. False rumors, like the wind, can whip around fiercely, yet they pass. It is my inner stillness that determines how deeply I am affected. Silence is not about passivity, it is about wisdom. The Buddha taught that clinging to the opinions of others can lead to suffering. False rumors are just that, opinions or distortions that do not define me. By choosing silence, I deny those rumors the power to disturb my peace. Instead of engaging in endless explanations or arguments, I focus on what truly matters, my own truth and integrity. This practice requires a deep trust in the nature of truth. The Buddha likened truth to a flame. It always rises above the darkness, no matter how much it is covered. When I remain silent in the face of false accusations, I'm not conceding, but allowing the truth to emerge in its own time. I do not need to fan the flame. It burns brightly on its own. Choosing silence also allows me to reflect. Why do these rumors bother me? Is it because I fear judgment or rejection? If so, this is an opportunity to examine my attachments. The Buddha often spoke about letting go of the need for approval and learning to stand firm in one's own self-awareness. False rumors provide me with a mirror to see where my insecurities lie and a chance to address them with mindfulness and compassion. Silence also protects my energy. Engaging with rumors can spiral into a cycle of negativity, draining my focus and peace. By choosing not to respond, I conserve my mental and emotional resources for what truly matters. This doesn't mean I ignore the situation entirely. If action is needed, such as clarifying with someone directly or addressing a misunderstanding, I approach it calmly and directly rather than with defensiveness. The Buddha's teaching on right speech reminds me to speak only when my words are truthful, kind, and necessary. False rumors invite reactive and defensive speech, but I choose to stay aligned with these principles. When I do speak, it is with clarity and intention, not out of a need to prove myself. Ultimately, the art of silence amid false rumors is about anchoring myself in mindfulness and compassion. I release the need to control how others perceive me, focusing instead on my own integrity and peace. Silence becomes a shield, protecting me from the chaos of gossip and allowing the truth to shine in its own time. 10. Embracing silence in uncertainty. In times of uncertainty, when the path ahead is unclear, I find refuge in silence. The Buddha taught that life is filled with impermanence and ambiguity. Rather than resisting these moments of not knowing, I embrace them as opportunities for growth and reflection. Silence in uncertainty is not avoidance. It is a conscious decision to pause and observe. When I encounter confusion, my mind often races, seeking immediate answers or solutions. But in these moments, I remember the Buddha's teaching on mindfulness. I take a deep breath, grounding myself in the present moment. By silencing the noise of my thoughts, I create space for clarity to emerge. This practice also strengthens my patience. The Buddha often compared life to a river, always flowing and changing. Just as the river doesn't rush to reach its destination, I remind myself that answers and resolutions will come in their own time. Silence helps me resist the urge to act impulsively or cling to premature conclusions. In silence, I find the opportunity for self-discovery. Uncertainty can feel unsettling because it challenges my sense of control. But instead of fearing the unknown, I use this time to turn inward. What is this uncertainty teaching me about myself? What attachments or fears are being revealed? These reflections guide me toward greater self-awareness and resilience. Silence also nurtures my connection to the present moment. When I am uncertain, my mind often fixates on the future, what will happen, what I should do. But through silence, I anchor myself in the here and now. The present moment becomes a refuge, free from the anxiety of what might be. The Buddha's teachings on impermanence remind me that uncertainty, like all things, is temporary. By embracing silence, I learn to sit with the discomfort of not knowing, trusting that clarity will arise when the time is right. This trust in the flow of life brings me peace, even amid confusion. Silence during uncertainty is also a form of strength. It shows that I am willing to sit with discomfort rather than seeking distractions or easy answers. This quiet courage builds my inner resilience, helping me face future challenges with grace and composure. In embracing silence, I find that uncertainty transforms from something to fear into an opportunity for growth. It becomes a space to deepen my mindfulness, reflect on my inner world, and cultivate patience and trust. Through silence, I learn not only to navigate uncertainty, but to thrive within it, finding peace in the very act of letting go. Life is a journey filled with challenges, uncertainties, and moments of profound growth. Along the way, silence can be one of the most powerful tools we possess. It's not a sign of weakness, but a reflection of wisdom, patience, and inner strength. By choosing silence in the face of anger, injustice, gossip, loss, and uncertainty, we step into a place of clarity and peace, a space where we can better understand ourselves and the world around us. The Buddha taught that the path to liberation begins within. Silence gives us the opportunity to listen to our own hearts, to the lessons of life, and to the truths that often get drowned out by the noise of the world. It's in these quiet moments that we find clarity, resilience, and the courage to live authentically. As you continue your journey, remember that silence is not an absence, but a presence, a deep connection to yourself and the flow of life. Use it as a tool to grow, to reflect, and to align your actions with your values. In the stillness, you will discover strength, compassion, and the wisdom to navigate any challenge. Thank you for walking this path with me today. May you carry the lessons of silence into your life and find peace in every step of your journey. If this message resonated with you, I invite you to reflect on it, share it, and let it guide you toward the calm and clarity we all seek. Until next time, may your silence be filled with wisdom and your path be one of mindful growth.